We. Yeah, I even said that myself sometimes in video. And I, like, when I said okay, we understand, sometimes I said, who's we? You mean you, Lord Master, damn it.
So why don't you just say I?
I don't think I ever said the word I before, but I often, role play in these games, so I sometimes prefer role playing as the character that I'm playing as. You know what I mean?
No. But
Yeah.
but that's a thing that I can't do. I can't be someone else. Like I can't pretend to be someone else. Like if I'm playing a video game, I can't lose myself in that character because I'm very aware that I'm controlling a character. So when you're like, oh, how does John Hurt make you feel? And it's like, I don't know, dude. He's some schmo. I'm not the guy in the game. I'm a different dude.
So you don't follow the suspense of disbelief idea.
I cannot. It is impossible for me to in any shape or way or form. I have never lost myself in my entire life in watching a movie, a television show, or playing a game, or reading a book. By the way, when should we do that literature podcast?
Wow. Like any kind of literature, like anything from Ernest, God damn it, Ernest Hemingway
Yeah,
to
Ernest
Star Wars.
Hemingway. I'd much rather talk about Star Wars because I fucking hate Ernest Hemingway. He was such a, speaking of pretentious dillbags, that guy.
Yeah, he went fishing with Che Guevara one time.
Who gives a fuck? He wrote the most boring ass books of all time that I had to read in high school.
Um,
The Great Gatsby was a more interesting book, and nothing happened in that.
or even literature from other countries that is really significant to them, like Don Quixote.
And okay, I was gonna say like not like Indian works because I've never read any of those. Maybe some. I could talk
I,
for a couple of hours about Le Morte d'Arthur.
eh,
Just whether or not anyone else would find that interesting. The internet's worst literature podcast.
wow.
Well, though they would make it sound like we're talking about the worst literature, which we're not doing.
Oh no, because who would want to,
I could talk for several hundred hours about bad books I've read too.
like the Necronomicon?
That's not quite what I meant. I just meant poorly written, not
Oh,
evil.
oh.
This is the internet's worst gaming podcast. I'm Loki Jarson here once again, joined with my in real life brother, who prefers to go by his middle name, Thomas, also known as L0rd Masta on YouTube. Hello.
Hello, I am Lord Master, YouTuber, entertainer, and an occasional Indian film aficionado.
Okay, thanks for your Wikipedia profile. The last time we did this was about 2 months ago, right?
Yes,
This was just before the big Texas freeze or after? I can't remember.
it was a day before the Texas freeze that was caused by a winter storm named Uri. That's Uri.
Okay, I don't know why we need to name storms like we name hurricanes. We don't name tornadoes.
Because there's just thousands of them every
Well,
year.
there are thousands of winter storms. Anyways, it fucking sucked down here.
Yeah.
We live in the south. Not giving anything away here. We live in the south part of Texas,
Hmm.
where it's always hot. Except during the storm, it went down to like 0 degrees or something ridiculous.
Yes, at one point during the wind chill, and that was on Monday night or Tuesday night, one of those nights.
We had 4 straight days of no power.
Yeah, it wasn't
Um,
just here. It was the near basically 90% of the state without power.
yes, but we also, for 2 of those 4 horrible days, had no water for other various reasons. So it was a miserable fucking time. Um, and perhaps worst of all, during that time, we didn't get to play any video games.
Um, well, we did play old ass board games, and we figured out how to, play a little bit of gambling despite the lack of chips.
Well, uh, oh, you know what? I forgot to mention this, but I've learned how to play Baccarat since.
Huh.
So we should play that. It's like blackjack, but stupider. Anyways, that's over with.
So,
And
yeah, one more thing. That's just now part of Texas state history, and we all live through it.
cool. I don't think it's notable that we were cold and bored. But there you go.
It,
So that's what's happened in the last few months, which is why we haven't recorded since. Fun fact: the last 2 episodes were recorded on the exact same day. That's why the quality is reflected in that. Also, during that storm, this is probably relevant because you say we recorded it before it went out, and I hadn't yet published those episodes.
yeah.
So during the storm, obviously I lost power here in this room. So this laptop I'm talking to you on didn't have power. It was so cold that my hard drive actually froze up. It locked up and it couldn't spin, and my computer couldn't turn on. So I was very close to losing those last 2 episodes. So damn well better have enjoyed them. Person is listening. Today we're going to talk about some more stupid bullshit. What do you have on the docket, Thomas? Because you know I don't do any prep work.
Well, last time when we had our own show together, that we talked mainly about the FMV games, at the most.
Yeah, and how terrible they are.
Oh, I got a few more of them, which, of course, some of which are a bit more notable than others.
Go ahead.
So, first one, I mean, you mentioned that game before when we were talking about critical path of the whole idea of the game of it's I got to do this
It,
thing and that thing, you know.
it is perhaps the most infamous, I don't want to say famous, the most infamous FMV game.
Yeah, it's called Night Trap. You mentioned it before.
Hmm.
So, when did
I've,
you discover it or heard about it?
I've known about this for a very, 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 very long time, all the way going back to the mid 90s. It starred, quote unquote, one of the actresses from the Who's the Boss TV show, I believe.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, Dana Plato or Plato. How do you say her name?
who cares? Um, but the point being that instead of, at the time 16-bit graphics, Sega, I think,
Yeah,
decided to use full motion video, which is to film real live actors prancing around a house, singing terrible songs, and acting like General Ponces for 30 minutes. Because that's the other thing about Night Trap. It's an incredibly short game. I seriously think it's like 40 minutes, if that. And several scenes play throughout this house that you're watching. You're some sort of weird voyeur cop, allegedly. And you switch back and forth between the scenes. It's like, okay, we're in the bathroom for this scene to watch this girl in a towel. And it's very creepy. And then we switch over to the living room. Oh no, there's a guy in a trash bag suit and he's creeping up on a girl and she's too stupid to turn around. But okay, I pressed this button. Oh, he fell in the hole in the floor and a bunch of smoke came out. Hey, success. Next room. And you did that over and over for 40 minutes. It's trash, and I'm so not looking forward to this. So go ahead.
so also regarding that actress, Dana Plato, she was better known as Kimberly Drummond on the NBC/ABC sitcom Different Strokes. You ever heard of that one?
It doesn't matter. It literally does not matter what she was on. She was not famous enough to headline a thing, and her careers took a literal nosedive because she got super addicted to drugs after this thing.
Yeah, it's fucking depressing.
Yes, so let's not dwell on it.
And you mentioned about the it says some sort of cop or whatever that looks over all the security
I
cameras.
know what it actually is, but I want you to say it because you did the research for this.
And also from what footage that I've seen from other people played it, and including there was this one video on YouTube where it kind of made it almost like a movie cut. You know, that transitions very, very well.
Well, yeah, because you only actually see 2/3 of the screen. The other third is cut off by this interface that you switch back and forth between. It's like press button to go to garage, press button to go to bedroom, press button to go to other bedroom.
So, so yeah, and and did you know that the name of those guys, the organization that's called the Special Control Attack Team, SCAT. That's what it stands for.
I didn't mute myself, but I wanted you to hear the dead silence of me not laughing.
So it kind of reminds me of. I know this is slightly off topic, but you know how there's groups or factions with funny acronyms. Uh, Most notably, the Union of People You Ought to Respect, Son, or Up Yours.
Yeah, but those are always, they come up with a word first, then go backwards. They're called backronyms. They come up with a dumb word, and they're like, okay, this dumb word actually stands for blah, 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 da, da. Ah, doesn't that make sense? No, it doesn't. They wanted to make a poop joke, and so they did.
Yeah, somebody's having too much fun on their way of writing.
Well, it's great because no one playing the game had any fun.
And it took a long time for them to develop or when to put it out. Like what I mean is, all this video footage there, it was recorded back in 1987, and the game came out in October 15th of 1992. And I mentioned in the previous podcast of how the early 90s still like the 1980s, so it doesn't look all out of place.
It's bad. I can't believe it or not. A couple years ago, I think like 4, maybe 3 years ago, they released the HD quote unquote version of this. You can get it on PS4 and stuff, and I have no fucking idea why. Like the kitschiness is long past of this. Oh, look, it's so bad it's good crap, which I despise. And so it's like there's no redeeming factor in this thing, and it ushered in perhaps some of the stupidest discussion about what video games are in history that we still suffer today.
And you say it's on a PS4. Is it on the store somewhere for you? Like, will you ever glance
I
through
don't
that?
know. I think Limited Run had discs of it. Like you could buy actual Blu-ray copies of the game for an exorbitant price, way more than the $0 it's worth.
And what else? And again, the plot and the whole setting is basically kind of like a teen horror B movie of sorts.
It's it's unbearably stupid, and it's why I don't have anything positive to say about this. I have nothing positive to say. It is unbearably stupid because, oh, we've got some intel that there are these like trash bag vampires that are going to kidnap these girls. But instead of doing anything about it, we're going to have you, the schmo who isn't actually in the game, press buttons to trap them in this trap house.
Yeah, despite the fact that they put an undercover agent over there.
Yeah, who didn't do dick. Who you can also trap at the end of the game for comedy ha-has. Astonishingly, I can't remember. Years later on the PS2, a game called Deception by Tecmo had basically the same premise. You were a minion of the devil, captured in in a house, and your job was basically to capture other people in the house as sacrifices to the devil. Um, it was very crude for the early. It actually may have been a PS1 game too. But there have been like 5 sequels and a couple of spin-offs to it. And the premise is that it's actually a JRPG. So the more people you trap in the house using very silly methods, you gain XP and level up and can use more exorbitant traps throughout the series and that sort of shit. So it's not that the idea is so objectionable. It's that the execution is so piss poor.
And plus, found out recently that apparently it's like, yeah, the concept of the game is actually older than Night Trap, so it's been around since the 80s. FMV games in general started in the 1980s.
Yeah, but they never made any money and weren't worth a damn. Can we move on to the reason it's famous? The real reason?
Yeah, there were some scenes that are just rather, at least in the mindset of some people that thought it was, it's like, oh my gosh, what is this shit? As in like the violence description of it, even though it's kind of different in today's standards from our modernized.
If you look at this garbage in 2021 here, this would be totally fine at like 2 p.m. on the Disney Channel. There's not a single objectionable thing. There's one girl in a towel, I think. It's been many years since I've seen the actual footage. But, there's no blood. Nobody's heads are getting cut off. It's just guys in all black ski masks falling down holes and smoke comes out. I don't know where some damn conservative network in the early 90s got upset about this. Because it's like, well, we've fought this stigma for 40 years. Whatever. That video games are for children. And it's like, oh man, they're showing children this filth.
And this was around the same time as Mortal Kombat, the original Mortal Kombat, I think. The arcade fighting game that also came out the same year, 92. Man, 92 in video games.
Which was also not marketed to children, by the way, is a very important distinction.
Yes, the 1993 congressional hearings on video games that happened on December 9th of 93, so a year after those 2 games we mentioned came out.
That's how Congress works, Thomas.
Yeah. Again, you say it was conservatives. Actually, you know who was the head of these hearings at that time?
I'm gonna guess. Joe Lieberman.
Yes, Joe Lieberman. But do you know who was the other guy?
No, I don't know.
Herb Cole.
Who the fuck is Herb Cole?
Kohl. Business,
Never heard of him.
businessman.
Joe Lieberman, I think he's dead, right? Joe Lieberman?
I think he's still alive.
That's unfortunate. He is one of the enemies of all time in video games. Not just for this creation of the ESRB, but for the years later, him and bitch-ass Hillary Clinton went all in on that hot coffee mod, which was not actual content in GTA San Andreas, which led to more horse shit in video games. It's like, oh, they're marketing it towards children. They're fucking not. This stupid game and Mortal Kombat created the Entertainment Software Ratings Board, where a literal panel of 5 or 6 adults sit in a room, look at footage from a video game, and judge based on a series of criteria what can of what is in that game, which the developers may or may not show some stuff, what to label the game. We used to only have a few labels. We had E, T, and M. Since then, we've expanded to what, E10, I think, and the AO, which doesn't really exist except in some few specialty titles, which are basically just porn games that you only find on the PC anyways.
Yeah.
I lament about this because here in 2021 we're still fighting this idiot thing.
The censorship.
All these years later, yes, all these years later, we're still blaming video games for violent acts of young people. We're still saying that video games corrupt little kids. It's like, you fucking parents don't do any research at all. There's a big M or a big T on your stupid thing. I have 2 video games right in front of me here. One is rated M and one is rated T. The T, animated blood and violence. Okay. Now, if I'm 12 years old, I'm not going to be allowed to play this. Well, I wasn't in my household when I was growing up. This M game, blood and gore, intense violence, strong language, suggestive themes. So you cut someone's head off and someone says the word fuck. Obviously, you don't want a little kid to see that sort of thing. So don't let him fucking play it. This is why I detest Night Trap for creating this stupid thing. What they've done is create a governmental board that lets parents not think for themselves.
Yeah, that's unenforceable.
It's totally enforceable by the individuals who buy the games. You know, has gaming become more adult in the last 30 years? Yes, certainly. But you still, if look at Fortnite, for God's sake. Fortnite is the most popular thing with people under the age of 18, right?
Yes.
There's no objectionable content in that, but the point of the game is to kill everyone until you're the number 1 winner. The stupid chicken dinner, or whatever they call it in that one, actually. I think it's turkey surprise.
Yeah.
Turkey supper.
Yeah, it's cartoon violence. There's a difference.
Apparently, if it's cartoons cutting each other's head off, hey, Bugs Bunny, we all saw that when we were kids. Big Chungus. But if a realistic-looking person, oh, no. Impressionable young minds. What's the next thing? I can't believe I got so angry again.
Yeah, that got you awake.
I was tired before we started this episode. Now I'm pissed.
Yeah, I'm glad we got through that. That was a significant part of video game history.
Yeah, for all the wrong reasons. It made things worse and set us back in video game development. And perhaps even more worse and relevant to today's further topics, it spawned a lot of imitators.
Yeah, like the game that we mentioned on the last podcast, and other similar FMV games. It's like, I wonder if that also, inadvertently, make the FMV genre not too widely popular, even today.
Yeah, again, I've mentioned last time, they're still making FMV games. I'm baffled as to why. The only answer is because they're cheap.
Yeah, they actually made one last year. Found out recently there is one in 2020.
There's one in 2021. It's on the store. I'm not going to say what it is, but I know what it is, and I don't want to play it. I don't want to look at real people when I'm playing video games. There's enough other medium for that.
Right. Now, this other game that we'll talk about, this came out in 1995. It's less FMV, but more interactive movie. Movie video game.
It's still FMV. Stop trying to dance around it.
Yeah.
It's like when someone calls a comic book a graphic novel. Motherfucker, it's a comic book. Just own it. It's fine.
Yeah, much like there is such thing as a novel, but there is a illustrated novel. Is that any difference from a comic?
That might be different because typically the illustrations aren't on the paper. I mean, aren't on the picture. In a comic book, the words are on the picture. And so I have some old illustrated classics of like H.G. Wells and shit. and those have pictures opposite the text. So that might be actually different.
Ah,
But that's not what graphic novels are. Graphic novels are comic books.
yeah. It's almost like we might as well do a podcast on literature if we were that bored if we ran out of anything to talk
I
about.
wouldn't object to that at all. I've long said we need to expand our horizons. But the fucking game you wanted to talk about, because you never actually said the name, is
It's called Psychic Detective.
uh,
And so you've watched a lot of detective shows over the years.
okay. I don't know the history about this game like I do Night Trap, but I have seen a full playthrough. I have seen several full playthroughs. I saw one on a guy's channel on YouTube who we're not going to name because he's still active, and Retsupre, which I'm not allowed to talk about because it's defunct. But years ago they did a watch through of this dumbass game. So the premise is actually pretty interesting, but the execution again piss poor. You're the guy. What I think from just memory here, Eric Fox, the psychic detective.
Yes.
But he doesn't actually do any detecting. He's just psychic.
Yeah.
So he's like doing some dumb magic show, and he's like, "Oh, you're holding up a wallet, or it's a picture of your grandmother, or your wife gave you that watch, or that stupid mentalist shit," which isn't psychic, but whatever. And then a psychic lady comes up to him and says, "Hey, I need you to come be a psychic detective at this stupid party that my family's having." Like most of the family is also psychic. The interface for the game is actually the most interesting part of the game because they film a scene in FMV with real actors doing a scene, and you're at the POV of Eric.
Mhm.
During the gameplay, you can actually switch between the POV of the other people at the party. You can do this throughout the game, I think all the way through the end, just jumping back and forth between different perspectives. So they film the scene over again, but this time the cameraman is playing another character. You know, it's the girl. I'm not going to remember anybody else's name. It's the girl, or it's the creepy old aunt, or it's the weaselly-looking dude. So they have to film the scene like 6 or 7 times to get the perspective of all the different people doing the same blocking, doing the same lines. So that's an interesting concept, to be fair. But in order to fit all those videos onto the CD, they compress them to hell. So your interface, when you actually see the game, is fucking minuscule. It takes up maybe a third of the entire screen, and the other 2/3 is this terrible layout. It's kind of one of the ugliest layouts of an FMV game I've ever seen. It's just like psychedelic shit, yellow and purple colors, and it takes up so much of the background, and you click back and forth. And every time you click, instead of just immediately hopping, it has to load, right? Because it's off a CD. So it does this incredibly stupid transition of whoa, 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 and sometimes people are screaming at you because of your psychic brainwaves. There's a lot of psychic brainwave screaming in this game.
And cats meowing.
That's just awful. There's people moaning and people yelling and people laughing, and every single time you switch between them, they go cacophony of nonsense because they have to load from the CD. And there's something like I don't think there's 50 different endings. There's a large, absurd number.
So you said that it just had a lot of content there, so no wonder why it has 3 discs.
Yeah, but again, they filmed a ton of footage. They just had to shrink it down. And by the way, now that we're because I'm sure all these people are long dead. Everyone in this game is fucking hideous.
From
I don't think they're all like Middle European, but you see a lot of up close of a lot of people's faces, and they're all ugly. And your main character Eric he's one of those guys who thinks he's really funny but really isn't.
oh, he was working at a comedy club, a magic comedy club, whatever.
Yeah, magic comedy where they tell jokes that they hypnotize you into thinking are funny.
And
And then you have like a psychic fight, and you have to play like shitty psychic chess against this bald dude.
yeah, that kind of threw me off.
Brain controlled people, like again, the concept really cool. Execution, story, acting, interface, all bad. I'm trying to like, okay, now is there a better concept? Because I give you a better concept for Night Trapped with Deception. Is there a better concept for Psychic Detective? Probably, but not in the way of jumping back and forth between. Multiple protagonists works when it's a limited number of protagonists. If you have like 2 or 3, but you can't have 10. You can't jump between 20 people and expect to have a coherent story.
Because you might miss something.
Yeah, which is the reason it has so many different endings, because you might not jump into the skateboarding kid. You might jump into the cop or the homeless guy instead. So you're gonna miss a ton of content, and it's like, well, sorry you guys filmed all this shit that I'm never gonna see.
Yeah, that requires a special amount of attention.
Have you actually played either of these two games we've mentioned?
Not Nitro, but I did play some of Psychic Detective. Just only doing it just out of memory because that one's a bit hazy. Because
Yeah.
again, a lot of things happening.
It's incredibly hard to follow. Even if you watch, I've seen several full playthroughs. I still haven't seen all the content in it because I filmed a ton, and it's still incredibly hard to follow what the fuck is going on ever with these stupid little collecting jars that store psychic energies. Like, what the fuck does any of this have to do with anything? It's a mess. It's a mess.
Yeah, that's almost like if it was adopted for, I don't know, like a television movie, that means that's just one part of the story. Not you can't get all of them.
No, they filmed in fact too much. They were like, oh, we're gonna have so many branching paths. Well, guess what? Nobody saw most of them because you filmed too many. And again, it's horrible compression, so everything looks like they're yarn ghost.
And not to mention, the whole story and the plot is a bit out there.
There have been stupider things. I'm not against the concept, but the execution is so bad. I think maybe that Medium game that came out from Bloober Team might be the closest equivalent because you play some sort of psychic and you're trying to solve a mystery, but it's supposed to be a horror game. I haven't played.
Yeah, this one is less horror, more what the frack?
Yeah, I don't understand what the point of it was.
Yeah, because
Like Night Trap maybe had some exploitation. Psychic Detective is like we had a weekend. We had a weekend and a bunch of ugly people who thought they were going to make it big.
yeah, they're part of some sort of conspiracy involving some sort of religious cult or whatever.
It's unfollowable because they just it's one of my favorite stolen phrases that I'm not giving credit for. They threw a bunch of spaghetti at the wall and then wrote about the spaghetti that fell on the floor.
Huh. That's quite a phrase.
What's next?
Again, it's just a bit dumbfounded. Even you describing me that game again, just woo.
Yeah, it's nonsense.
Now,
It's hideous nonsense as opposed to dull nonsense, which is better.
in what way?
Well, there's something to talk about. I don't have anything but disdain for Night Trap, but for Psychic Detective, I'd be like, you know what? I like the concept. I just hate everything
Yeah,
else.
it's almost like it's a pretty ambitious concept, and takes a lot of filming and a lot of people involved.
Yeah,
So at least they put money into that one.
it's not worth the effort though. Like the payoff, it just isn't. The most branching narrative video game I can think of, your Telltale games, even those are so limited in scope because you can only have so many decisions because not every player is going to see every one of them, and if they don't, then why bother? I just thought of a good equivalent. This isn't quite the same thing. A lot of David Cage games get a lot of shit for the overacting kind of weird nonsense, even though I like most of them.
I never heard of him.
He did the Heavy Rain. You know that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Heavy Rain is a good example of this because you have, in fact, 4 protagonists in that game, and they do interact with each other in various ways, and you can make decisions and sort of things that branch off the narrative. And it is possible to have all 4 live to the end of the game, or only 3, or only 2, or no one, or everyone dies, and that's the end of the game. I actually really like Heavy Rain, all things considered, even though it's dumb as fuck, but it's an enjoyable dumb as fuck.
And
The problem is when that game came out, David Cage, the designer himself, said you should only play this game once, and the ending you get, that's your story. It's a stupid thing to say because it's like, why would you not want everyone to experience everything the game has? And that one, again, does have several endings. He did another one with Beyond Two Souls, which I never finished, with formerly Ellen Page and Willem Dafoe, which you play a psychic girl, and it also has the branching narrative, but not as branching as Heavy Rain. And then the robot one that I never played was allegedly pretty good, Detroit Become Human, where you play as several various robots, and they're all trying to learn what it means to love, or whatever. I never actually played it. Presumably that also has branching narrative. So again, it's
what?
not
What? You continue.
it's not bad to have multiple protagonists or branching narratives. It's just not a good idea to do that in the early 90s with an FMV game.
It's almost like it's slightly ahead of its time with the concept.
If they redid it, I think they could and give a tighter focus and not have it be FMV. It might be a pretty interesting game.
And are there any TV shows or movies that had a similar concept? Because for some
I'm
reason,
sure, but
the only one I can think of, even though that's a completely different genre, is that TV show Psych.
well, no, because he was a fake psychic. That was the point. He was pretending to be some for the 8 seasons or whatever that show ran, and that was pure comedy all the way through. Although in the several, I've seen all of them. Although in the several scenes when they try to be dramatic, it fell flat because it's like, this is a comedy show. Stop trying to make me sad. I don't give a shit about you idiots. Go make funny. Next.
So again, continuing this theme into psychology or whatever, not psychic but psychology. Anyways, it's this other game that I played just last night. Played all 4 hours of it. This is just for in preparation of, for this show. So that way I can have a fresher mindset. And that's this psychological thriller interactive movie game called Tender Loving Care, TLC. You ever heard of that one?
Okay. Yes, this one I have seen from that same YouTuber who I first saw, the Psychic Detective, in fact, who we're not going to mention. This is not a video game at all.
Oh, this is far more of a interactive movie.
No. This is a movie that they filmed and then said, no one wants to distribute this. We're going to put it out as an interactive movie, which means every so often it pauses to let you pick A or B. It's similar to like early visual novels in which there were no actual choices. It just rolled the story around and you were given a lot of false choices. TLC has a lot of false choices. And it's so, this one, again, back to disdain. Because this is all memory, all right? So correct me if you care. There's this guy, and he's either cheating on his wife or wants to cheat on his wife, and maybe he's getting a divorce. And every so often, there's like a therapist, and John Hurt shows up to be like, well, what did you think about that? Would you have done the same thing? Like he's fucking Rod Serling. What is this?
Yeah, again, John Hurt, he's a very famous actor of his time. So where have you seen him in?
Like 10 movies. What year was this?
This game?
Yes.
Originally released in 1998 on DVD and Windows, but it was re-released on iOS on 2012. And I got this on Steam.
God. Again, this is not really a video game because, as I've perpetuated before, like what makes a video game is the possibility of failure. And in this game, failure is just like, well, that's just one of the ways it went. And it's like, no, fuck you, John Hurt.
Again, it's like, yeah, you've seen him in a couple of movies. You know where I first saw him in, of all things, as far as movies concerned? No. He was in the 1984 version of 1984. He was Winston.
Okay. When the hell did you see that?
Internet somewhere.
Even I've never seen the movie.
But there's a 1950-something adaptation of 1984, which is readily available on YouTube. I've seen that one as well.
Which is probably the most accurate thing you're going to see, because that's when the book was written.
Yeah. It came out, well, I guess around that year by, George Orwell.
Yes.
Quite an interesting person, as far as his personal life's concerned.
Again, if we have that literature spin-off podcast, we'll go right into that.
Yeah. And again, the Tender Loving Care, this was directed by David Wheeler, who co-wrote Trilobites The 11th Hour, that interactive movie puzzle venture game with a horror setting way back from...
This just screams of someone who's a frustrated director, right? Because he's just like, I want to make movies, but no one wants to distribute my movies. I can't get, who would have been around back then? New Line Cinema to distribute my film. So it's like, if I just repackaged it as a movie, which means every so often it pauses so you can pick A or B. So we just film different scenes. It wasn't like the previous games we've mentioned that were intended to be video games. This is a movie, and sometimes it pauses. This does not count as a game.
Oh yeah, that's like the in middle of a movie, like they would just stop right here and tells you, gives you questions, lots of questions.
Yes, but they don't have any bearing on the thing that's going to happen. That's my point. It's like, oh, would you have, gone to the fucking store to gotten milk? Who gives a shit? What does that have to do with the story you're telling me? Tell me a story. Don't ask me questions about, ooh,
Yeah, but
or shit.
yeah, but let me tell you, when I was playing that game last night, and of
When
all
you were
these
watching that
questions,
4-hour movie.
I had few bathroom breaks in between before we continue on. Um, and and those questions they gave me, I just answered them with full honesty of me, just my real life self, not the ideal myself. Just
That's fine. That's fine. But it had.
and I study it through a philosophical point of view because I'm more open-minded. And plus, like the two other games that we mentioned before, it also has multiple endings and alternate scenes that can be
Terrific.
influenced.
I hope you didn't spend more than $1 on this, genuinely.
I don't know how much it costs Steam, but I know it's less than 10, I assume. Um,
Oh, it should be less than 10 cents.
so, and what is this thing to you? Like every time when they pause that movie, they make you take a thematic apprehension test or TAT. You know what that is?
Something they made up for that movie.
Actually, that idea has been around since the 30s. It's it's supposed to, give them narratives that they make up about ambiguous pictures of people reveal their underlying motives, concerns, and the way they see the social world.
Oh, okay. So it's like this person's sitting down. What do you think this person is thinking? I don't know. Boredom, like me taking this dumb test in the middle of this movie?
Yeah, sounds like you just wouldn't think too much on those images that they would just give you. It's like this. Although,
I have among the many things I hate, pretentiosity. I think I came up with this word before. Pretentiosity is a big one. And the previous two games are not pretentious in any way. They're not serious at all. But this bullshit is so pretentious, it offends me.
oh, it's
It thinks it's art. It's like, oh, isn't this art? And it's art that punches you in the face with how arty it is. It's like, oh, this really makes you think about how Jim would really cheat on his wife because she was not putting out because she's a frigid bitch. But is she really a frigid bitch, or is she just dealing with her own complex set of emotions? Like, god damn, I don't care.
yeah,
I just want to shoot some shit.
yeah.
Put in Doom. Fuck this.
Well, that's because the couple was traumatized because of the death of the daughter car accident. That's
Okay,
what's
that's
going
real
on.
fucking sad. Why is this a video game? This isn't a video game. This is a Lifetime movie.
Yeah, that's what I was about to tell you next. That it's like it reminds me of one of those Lifetime movies you would watch, and I thought you may like it or something.
Okay, hold on, motherfucker. Hold on. I have never watched a full Lifetime movie in not never, like 20 years. I watch Hallmark movies. Thank you very
Oh,
much.
right.
And only on the Movies and Mysteries. What is it? Yeah, Movies and Mysteries channel, because lots of those have murders, even though there's no violence. There's just a shit ton of murder on that channel. People getting killed left and right, and it's like, wow, how is this professional crossword puzzle writer going to solve this murder? Eh, you know, at least they're not pausing every 10 minutes to ask me how I feel. I feel like I'm yelling too much, and I'm getting upset and angry, and I'm not like angry at you.
So, yeah,
I want to make sure the listener understands. I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at these dumbass games.
yeah. Sounds like if you were to take that thematic perception test yourself to profile your psyche, I'm sure you have a much different result than I do.
I think I would intentionally fuck it up because I despise tests that try to test me.
You don't like to be tested by those.
I don't like people knowing how I think, but I also don't want to know what other people think.
So you rather be.
I don't want people to police my thoughts, and I don't want to police anyone else's thoughts either.
So you rather be closed-minded on certain things.
I'd rather. That's not a very narrow way of saying it. I'd rather allow myself to think whatever I want to think and not have someone else tell me what to think. I'm also not going to tell anyone else what to think. I think these dumbass games we've been talking about are horrible. But if you had fun with them, what am I going to say about that? That's your business. If you like them, great. If you want to put them on your YouTube channel, I'll promote it all day long. Great. I just want nothing to do with them. That's just me. I'm not saying no one should ever do it. I'm just saying they're trash fire garbage.
Yeah, there's certain different levels of judgmental.
I guess. As long as it's even, even and fair. My judgment is even and fair. I don't care. If you do, great.
Yeah, you just treat them they treat you, and you treat them how whatever. That's how I do it. But anyways, again, we mentioned a bit of that plot about this couple that was traumatized because of the death of the daughter in a car accident, and they had to get a nurse to try to, get them back to normal life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially with Michael Overton's wife, Allison, for psychological hearing. But even though the nurse that they brought in uses some unorthodox methods, and that causes, tensions to, arise, which it kind of makes you wonder, whose side are you on? Although mostly for, Michael Overton here.
Neither.
But again, I just like again throughout and the different paths I took, just based on, how I function, me as an everyday person, and what I think of such things, and all that and more. And again, there's just far too many details that's just too weird for me to describe. That would just take up a whole podcast.
Great, so summarize it quickly.
Um, so it's almost like that nurse is a bit of a temptress or whatever. I mean, I knew she had a bit of an
Yes, it's a Lifetime movie. Yes, we've established.
yeah, and it has multiple endings from all the paths that led me to this. The one I got to what happened is like, I'm sure most people got the one where, Michael just become so infuriated that it just get the sledgehammer and hit him back in the head.
Yeah, very great thing. And John Hurt is like, well, how did that make you feel?
Uh,
Great,
yeah,
thanks so much.
but I didn't get that. What I got was, well, it's just him. It's like, hey, stop it. I know what you're trying to do. Just stop it right now. But he says, no, Elsa must tell the truth right now. You got to accept the fact that your daughter is gone. She's not coming back. That sort of thing. While he remained helpless. And she's got this doll that's supposed to be almost a living example of their dead daughter. And it's just going to be going away. And I was like, no, give it to me. So they fought over it until Catherine, the nurse, fell over the stairs. But she didn't die. She just became mentally capable, because you know how we get hit in the head, right? So what happened afterwards is that both Michael and Allison, they're kind of almost reconciled in a way, and they're happy that it feels like okay, we got our daughter back. But Catherine became Jodie's replacement, so she can't. She's incapable, but you could barely see, her eyes move, but she can't really speak. It's one of those I have no mouth, I must scream type of endings.
This is some of the stupidest shit you've ever said on this show, and that encompasses a wide variety.
Fucked up, man.
Yes, but purposefully fucked up. I can't stand this. I cannot stand a game that thumbs its nose at you, turns its nose up, whatever, sticks its fingers in your nose, and does something to your nose, is my point. Just so full of hot air and nothing.
I mean, how would Rob and Stizzy feel if they were to try to play these games themselves, and how would they?
They wouldn't. They would not. Both of those dudes, I know them very well over this last decade. Neither of them would play more than 5 minutes of this thing before deleting it. There's absolutely no way they have the patience to sit through this horse shit.
Oh, I was about to say, I guess they don't have the mindset nor the.
You always say this. You always say this to me in real life. You don't have the right mindset. Mindset has nothing to do with fun. I literally yesterday I had a discussion with Stizzy about certain games, and the reason I don't play certain games is because I don't find them fun. A video game, for me, number fucking one, has to be fun to play. It has to be a distraction to take my mind off whatever is going on in the real world. I want nothing of the real world, which is why I hate FMV games so much. It's because it's just people.
It's too much of the real world.
I don't want any real world stuff in my video game at all. I want it to be the fakest fake shit that ever faked, because then it's different and fun and interesting. At any time, take for hyperbole example, I, at any time, can go get married and then cheat on my wife and then have a kid with someone else and then run over a guy in his car and then talk to my psychiatrist, John Hurt, in a wheelchair, fucking whatever. But none of that is interesting or fun. That's not why I play video games. I don't play video games. The good story part is the bonus. It is an extra. If we're lucky, we get a good story 3-4 times a year in video games. But fun games should happen all the time, and it should be the #1 focus for a video game. A video game that is not designed to be fun should not be designed.
Sounds like you wouldn't go to therapy, would you?
I would not. Yes, editing all of this. So what's the next game? I hope it's fun.
Well, this one we're going to have a departure from the FFV interactive movie genre.
Thank God.
But it's just I mean, it's another game genre that I'm still playing to this day, but it's for a different reason. Because you know how when you play, your favorite genre, but then for some reason you decide to go back to an older game because the community keeps it alive with their own interesting, ways to enhance it.
Well, I know what you're going to say.
Add immersion.
But I know what you're going to talk about, but no, but that's only because I don't play PC games, so I don't do a lot of mods. But I have this week been playing a lot of Xbox 360 games on my Series X over here for no real reason, but just because I wanted to. So you don't need a reason to do these things.
Not because some dedicated community that wants to keep it interesting by creating their own set of mods.
Again, that's really a PC thing. You can't really do mods, outside of 2 Bethesda games on consoles.
Beat me to it. Anyways, the last time that I've talked about a Paradox interactive game of any kind was Crusader Kings 3, right? So recently I've gone back to playing Crusader Kings 2. And you know what's the reason for?
I assume as your lead-in said, a lot of mods.
Yes. I mean, I have used mods before, but there were 2 or 3 of them that really stood out to me. One in particular is called the Historical Immersion Project, or HIP as it's popularly known. So the HIP, which by the way, there's a couple of ongoing video series that I'm doing where there's about 2 or 3 and possibly more in the future, because there was another mod that I also added which complements it just to, make the game slightly more realistic as far as the ways is.
Slightly more difficult?
Yes, a bit more difficult to it if you know what the hell you're doing, depending on, character skills and whatnot. And the other is the Dark Ages mod version, whatever. But first, the Historical Immersion Project of what that is it's a collection of mods which are designed to be able to work together with any combination. And as the name suggests, all its modules share a common focus upon historical immersion, while also aiming to provide improved balance and new mechanics and flavor. And so these modules include Extended Mechanics and Flavor, or EMF, which is it's the core overhaul mod, which added a bunch of major changes to it, such as improved crown laws, dynamic levies, smart tactics system, which is, complete tactics overhaul for more realistic combat tactics, whether if it's cultural command differences, because it depends on if you're either Greek or Italian or Arab or even Indian or whatever. They have their own different cultural commands, like they got their own tactics that they know their stuff, as well as it depends on the terrain and whatever. Even they added the weather system in certain provinces. It depends on the time of the season, which it can either benefit or mess of it for 3 months, even though it's just temporary. It's not game breaking. So it depends on where you live. It's like you're experiencing a drought or a heavy rainstorm, and if you live in a wintry country, well then
it's Sim City all of a sudden.
Yeah, just only temporary for 3 months, and again, not game breaking or really messy. It's just a small penalty, very small. And unless you live in a coast, then there's coastal flooding, or live in a major river like the Danube, the Nile, or the Ganges, then there's river flooding.
But what can you do about it? Like, let's just say there's a typhoon. Just example sakes. Let's just say there's a typhoon. what are you gonna do about it?
Nothing.
Because if no, yeah, that's my point. If your enemy is building up an army in the game, okay, well, you're gonna either make friends with him or build up your own army. If there's a hurricane, what the fuck are you gonna do?
Well, yes, one of the penalties of bad weather is reduced levy size for 3 months. Because, well, they're not here. And thus making your... But it's not the whole country, it's just few provinces within a kingdom or empire or whatnot. So some are better than others.
Yeah.
And also another feature that they have is automatic empire disintegration, which if they fail to meet certain size requirements, forcing rulers to set empires back to king tier titles. Let's say that you have an empire title, but it's not empire size, so to speak, like the size of a kingdom or a duchy, right? A small country, so it disintegrates over time as well. Although there's more of these modules include somewhat more historic, which I'm only using it for one series, but the rest of the newer series I'm done, I have that turned off. But for this one in particular, it's for a comprehensive map overhaul, which, let's just say certain counties and provinces are just realistic looking as far as what is what, and as well as the coast, the beaches even, that looks realistic.
How does this affect the gameplay in any noticeable way?
Well, they did remove Central Africa and India, but that's for comprehension. What's that word you said earlier when we were talking about Psychic Detective with the amount of content they put? What's that word you?
Compression.
Compression, yes.
Yes.
It's to reduce that, because ever since they added India many years ago in Crusader Kings 2, some of the computers at that time were having a bit of a problem.
I was gonna say, I imagine the more you expand this map, the more memory it takes. Therefore, the slower the program runs.
Yes, and that's what this is for. But since I use a much more modern computer, I don't have that problem.
As opposed to the one you used to play Crusader Kings 2 on.
And a lot of things that they added, including this one, even though it later dropped out in 2015, but it's now a separate mod that I use them in all of my current series now, which is called Viet. Not like Vietnam. Even though the developer who made this is from Vietnam, but it stands for Vanilla Immersion Events and Tales, which is a mod that offers a ton of new flavor events that provide variety and the occasional supplies to the gameplay. Let's just say they have about 350 plus new events of almost a mundane or everyday life of what happens to your character or the province or
It's
what.
like, yeah, you stubbed your toe, gain 1 renown.
Yes.
To go back for a hot second. So the Tails doesn't need to be there. He totally put Viet because it, again, backronym. He came up with the word Viet and then said, "Oh, I need something to stand for this," because you can drop the T and it would still make sense.
Uh-huh. And only very few of them had chain events, including this one, which again I don't have a full description of it, but I could tell you some of the summary of it because I was doing it for this one of the ongoing series that'll be posted in future, where this guy who became obsessed with cinnamon. Do you ever put cinnamon on your food?
Not as a separate thing, but if it comes with it, I'm not objecting to it.
But he never became addicted to it.
It's not a thing you can become addicted to. It's a spice.
Yeah, that guy did. Which again, it's set in India where I'm doing that playthrough, so cinnamon is native over there. So he puts it on everything, including his favorite, cinnamon toasted sticky buns. And he made a whole feast of them, which all the vassals were kind of like, oh, what's the matter with this guy? Even those wise scholar says, hey, don't have them too early in the morning, otherwise you're gonna... And then he did. And then he's realized his consequences. And again, the payoff of this is there was a 50% chance he would get the gluttonous trait. And then he did.
Well, duh, you're eating a shitload of sugar all the time.
Although later he would lose the gluttonous trait due to the influence of his father, who originally abdicated to be a Hindu monk, and then we brought him back here, and then he uses one of his abilities from his monastic society, the L0rd Masta, where he gave spiritual guidance to the character, tells him to lose gluttony. So it's just basically saying, hey, what you are doing is a sinful lifestyle. I need you to drop it. And he's like, yes, father.
So again, I must ask, what influence does this have on the gameplay?
Ve-
This silly cinnamon nonsense. You lose respect.
uh, yeah, it all depends on which, again, just many generic mundane events with a few provincial events, including, well, then again, we've said a lot of silly shit on this podcast as of late, but I got this one little province modifier where it says good whores, where there's a little bit of tax income and all that. In fact, there's two modifiers in one province. One is it's a pilgrimage site where all these guys want to come over here and do business here and increase piety. But in this same province, there's also good whores. So now there's these women, good provide for these people who are coming into, the pilgrimage.
Does this mod really need to be called really need to be called good whores? We couldn't think of a better word for that.
Oh, that's what it says. And I even noticed later on in any of those playthroughs that I've done that I've realized some of these are reference to Elder Scrolls for Oblivion. Heck, they even added, well, it's they spelled it backwards, but I instantly recognize it. So they added the Kuima the Liar. That's Mike the Liar.
Oh, I didn't even try. They should get sued from Bethesda
What, for spelling it backwards? For the first
for
thing?
stealing intellectual property. I assume this guy comes and tells you nonsense lies.
Well, they're memes.
Well, I know that, but in game.
So yeah, they just wanted to add more flavor to. It's like, yes, we got realistic, more political stuff to do, but at the same time, we wanted to add a bit of variety. Which again, you can adjust the settings of these
Of how
advanced mod.
stupid it is.
I mean, I often leave it at balance, so you get a good balance of serious and funny events. But you can
Alright.
either make it more serious or make it so funny that it's near game breaking.
I was gonna say it's kind of against the grain of what Crusader Kings is all about, anyways. Like every so often, you'll get an insane ruler who's like, "The horse is a senator, and we worship the moon." But nothing ridiculous like cinnamon toast crunch or whatever the hell you said.
Oh, by the way, that insane thing you mentioned, it is a trait that's featured in this other overhaul mod that I later added to it too. Again, the combination of HIP and this one called Dark Ages. Currently, as of this recording, it's Dark Ages version 1.2.43. It was originally 0.41 when I discovered it. So it was updated a couple of weeks ago. And so this particular overhaul mod adds even more immersion and roleplay, adding close to 800 events, and the number is ever growing. And it's compatible with every other mod out there. And the guy who developed this is making his own version of the Dark Ages into Crusader Kings 3, so I'm sure we'll see that in the future, and maybe I'll use that as well whenever I wish to return to that game, which will likely be late this year.
Presumably, it doesn't have a shitload of comedy.
Oh no, this one's... Again, they added stuff about the stability system, such as the province stability, where if it's negative or positive, that has its own bonuses and penalties. And you can adjust it by applying a crown focus or appointing a province overseer, because you can't watch over all the provinces yourself. You gotta have an overseer for that. Especially if you are a guy who controls a very large amount of domain, like a lot of counties for you to control.
Isn't that the point of vassalage?
Yeah, somebody's got to watch over them, and if that land is too unstable and it's caused by a vassal, well, that's their problem.
Well, you're the overlord. You're supposed to deal with your minions.
Yes, and if a peasant revolt breaks out, well, we know whose fault it is, not you.
Yeah.
And just to add more realism to it, like, you remember how when children are born that they would get inheritable traits? It's like, oh, he's born strong or born attractive.
Yes, this baby is born a genius. Yeah, that silliness.
Well, just for added realism, in this mod they have delayed genetic traits, which they will be revealed at a later time in their childhood at a certain age.
Like real human beings.
So yeah, like if you want to know if your child is strong, well, you gotta wait till he's about 8 or 12.
When they start working out instead of being a strong baby.
Yeah, but there is one exception though, and that is there is a possibility that you could find out what trait that they got much earlier in their age, like that one time that I got a daughter who's a dwarf, and the guy's like, "Oh my goodness, what is this? A monster?" That's what they thought of
That's a
back
bit
then.
much.
Or even detectable on birth, such as hair lip. Haven't got that yet.
It's very strange that a lot of this is all mods. Like, I'm surprised so much of it isn't in base game.
They just didn't think of it back then.
To be fair, yeah, when did Crusader Kings 2 come out? 2013?
2012.
Sure.
And now you're in 2021, I just barely discovered them. And I'm like, holy crap, how come I didn't use that years ago? This would have enhanced those past series that I've done. And that's the reason why I came back to here. And all the other features of the Dark Ages, including mercenary companies, which is you can ask the captains to, give you some money that they've earned because you're the one that created it for them, as well as having a smuggler's ring for additional income. It works especially if you live in a low-income country or a poor
This
land.
doesn't seem like a lot of the things the king of the land would be doing, but whatever.
And also, if you live by a major river, like the Nile or the Ganges I mentioned before, or a coast of any kind, depending on certain traits, you can become a pirate, and you become a pirate lord, I should say, where you manage that fleets that they'll go raid or something to increase treasure, another source of income.
Again, you're no longer playing Crusader Kings. You are now playing that Port Royale game.
If you're a merchant republic, what the hell?
I'm just saying. At some point, you stop being a leader and start being a soldier. Yeah.
And also, there's more to this. Let's just say intrigue now really plays a role due to this mod. One of the skills, intrigue, where you can frame other characters just to make the person less popular than they were previously. Which, of course, any kind of action you do, it all depends on your skills and certain traits of what gives a positive income or negative income. It's just more dice rolling. And now you can also murder characters, which is different from plot to assassinate. We're talking about you, the character, murder the guy personally. Which it all depends on your skills, of course. And if you do more of that, you may pick up the assassin trait, separate from the assassin society that's available for Shia Muslims.
But again, for the fourth time, you're supposed to be the ruler of the kingdom. Why are you out assassinating people?
So basically, this is almost like a guy. I remember a guy who created the other set of mods that I often use, where he had this in develop, but he never did, and that is a criminal society. It's just basically a closest thing to it for addition, minus the Thieves Guild part. And also you can have political debates with your counselors and just about anything, whether it's diplomatic, military, management, industry, religion. It's just basically a debate. Win, lose, or draw. If it's a draw, that's a small loss of prestige because that was all for nothing. If you win, this guy owes you a favor. If you lose, now you owe that guy a favor.
Well, at least that's something a ruler would do. That's my friggin' point here.
And you mentioned about insanity. Well, now there's mental instability events. If your character happens to be a lunatic, possessed, or paranoid, which will be subject to 3 different pools of events depicting their mental instability. And you will face wild situations that lead to unforeseen and radical consequences. I've seen a guy from Tibet, the Emperor of Tibet, in fact, became a lunatic, and he was stressed and also depressed, and then he became clinically insane, so he's incapable to rule, had to rule by Regency. And even more modifiers pop up due to his insanity, including sexual abuse. I'm like, oh my goodness, this man's evil.
So how did he get to be the ruler?
Something must have happened to him in his past experience before becoming the emperor of one of the more powerful empires off the start of the game.
So maybe he just got syphilis and had trauma in the brain.
Yeah.
Like George II, I think, right?
The madness of King George?
Yeah, that's what the madness was. It was syphilis.
That happens a lot in the game. If you get syphilis, and the treatments they give you, and if you are not cured of it, it does give you the lunatic trait.
Yeah, that's what it does. Don't go around fucking every single thing you see, kids. Or adults.
And also to add more realism to the medieval times at that time, unless you're a Buddhist, and that is fewer women generals, where even though everybody's especially in the early ages, that the status of women is often traditional, where they don't hold positions of power. But if a female character starts off or is educated with a martial education, you can't have that. That's for rare occurrences, unless the country's status of women is full, so they won't allow it. So let's say if a female character off the start gets the martial education, and it says, hey, you can't have that, so they immediately switch to either diplomacy, stewardship, intrigue, or learning.
That's something you could never have in a modern game nowadays. And well, fortunately or not fortunately, it doesn't really matter. It's just something you can't do anymore.
And found out when I was playing as a Buddhist the other day, I found out that actually there's no restrictions for a female character. They can be in any position on the council and even take command of armies.
Why would a Buddhist character have an army?
They still got to have they still got to protect themselves from, raiders or other
Cool.
powers.
There's a difference between self-defense and an army.
Heck, even Jain lords defend themselves, but applies to the laymen or non-members of the clergy.
That's a lot.
And finally, again, other stuff that includes different set of game rules and shipwrecks, which is what happens if you go out on a naval campaign and don't be out for too long, especially in winter. And if the fleet gets destroyed, then whoever's army that's on board goes with them too. And now the spouse events, that's also in that Dark Ages mod, that adds more important role rather than just be a consort, right? Unless it depends on the status of women's soul. We mentioned about the council positions, again, whether if you're a Buddhist or not. But now some of them will try to have more influence to your life, and more than just be a consort. Let's say, like, if she wants to be on the council, even though that goes against the rules, and even though the vassals will be like, oh, you're weak, like weak ruler, like you allow your wife to have more power over you, that sort of thing. Or you may have a serious lack of harmony, which also gives you a penalty of reduction of skills. And by the way, there is a penalty of reduction of such skills. Like we mentioned, the all 5 skills. If it gets below 5, then you will have a penalty for appalling. Like, let's say if you have 4 intrigue or less, the penalty is you have much reduction of arresting somebody, or what plot is there, so you can't discover them or even try to come up with whatever plot, whether it's kidnap, assassination, all that. Yeah, that's just an example of one of the penalties. So you need to be taking care of all the skills. So you got to be an all-around guy. So that's what this mod is like. They encourage you to be all around everything. And if you're not good at one, well, you better fix that. Otherwise, bad stuff's gonna happen to you.
Again, it seems dead set on making a difficult game even more difficult. Which, if you find fun in that, hey, great.
So that's why HIP, Dark Ages, and now added with Viet Events Reborn, a flavored event mod. So just add a bit of variety of seriousness and a little bit of fun to it, of an everyday life.
Do you have anything else?
Oh, we mentioned about the ongoing series. There's one I'm currently doing is that Prussia series, which is still continuing, but I've been slowed down on it because I'm filming other ongoing series.
Yeah, how about you just do one instead of 3 things at once? Wouldn't that be better?
Yeah, I'm trying to, but I'm currently committed with this thing, and I'm wrapping up on this one before we'll finally get back into this one full time for the long term. And I could shelve this one that I've been working on and schedule it a couple of months down the line, so I don't have to worry about them. So one series I'm doing is Prussia, and the other one is Sogdia, which that one's short term. Then that one's from a different overhaul mod that's called When the World Stopped Making Sense, which is set in the late antiquity, early Dark Ages, early Middle Ages. So basically after the fall of the Western Roman Empire and prior to the rise of Islam, in that time period. And so that's a separate thing. And I mentioned about that Indian series briefly. I'm doing one with the Gupta dynasty, which is of a Bengali culture in northeast India. And also, far down the line somewhere, I'm contemplating doing a series on the Tokharians, a different, not quite minority culture, but they're a bit more widespread from a completely different region, and that's in the Xinjiang autonomous region in China as we know it today, northwest China, where the desert is, um, where Tokharians were the original inhabitants there. They're one of the easternmost Indo-European speaking people. So, yes, Caucasian people living in China. Hard to believe, isn't it?
No, because there's lots of them.
More than I think.
I don't know. I don't friggin' do a census of Chinese.
Yeah, so Tokharians, mainly Buddhist, live along the Silk Road, similar to the Sogdians, except less trade and more of the desert people. It's very poor land. It's just all desert with little of everything going on. So that's pretty much all I got for my current projects now that I've mentioned it to you.
Yeah, you're juggling like 4 of them at once, which is kind of absurd.
It's all because of these
Um,
overhaul mods that just for some reason led me to come back to this game and
I can't fault you. Well, I kind of can. See, because you're recording all of this and separating it all into different videos that you're posting to your channel.
uh,
If you were just doing this for funsies, I'd be like, you're playing 4 things at once. I'd be like, yeah, it's fine, whatever, who cares? Because I play, 4 games a day. It just seems like a lot of work as opposed to, the fun aspects of fun games.
so yeah, it's as I said, I'm having a bit of a fun experience with all of these ongoing series. Some short term and one long term.
All right. Well, because I don't have anything else, Lord knows, where where can people find these things that you just talked about? I had a good transition, but you talked over it, so I forgot it.
Well, you can find me at the L0rd Masta channel. That's L0rd. That's Lord with a zero. And Masta is Masta. Did I got it right?
It's your name, dude. I hope so. You can find me on the internet at Loki Jarson on Twitter, and anywhere else you see that name, that's probably me. Um, I genuinely don't have anything else to talk about because I burned all my candle in the first half hour yelling about.
What an emotional roller coaster.
Well, I don't think any of those games are fun. If you find adding hurricanes to Crusader Kings makes it more fun, great, terrific. Um, Games should be fun. They shouldn't be pretentious. They shouldn't be up their own ass. They shouldn't be trying to teach you a lesson. It should be an enjoyable experience.
And you gotta have a good balance of seriousness and fun, like we mentioned in the last topic.
Yeah. I hope you found this podcast fun. If I edit it right, maybe you'll find it a little serious too. That didn't make any sense. I'm going to cut all that out. I hope you found this podcast fun to listen to. If you did, or even if you didn't. No, that doesn't work either. Damn it. I'm just going to stop right there. There. I hope you found this podcast fun to listen to. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.